This vast archipelago, spread along the equator, which we know today as Indonesia, is one of the oldest stories of human civilization. This land, which consists of more than 17,000 islands, is not only geographically unique, but its history is also filled with extremely complex and interesting events. Millions of years ago, when the map of the Earth was completely different from today, this area was already showing glimpses of human life. When we look back in search of the earliest human inhabitants, we find that Javanese man, scientifically known as Homo erectus, inhabited the area about 1.5 million years ago. This discovery is so important that it has given a new direction to the entire story of human evolution. These remains found on the banks of the Sangamon River show that these early humans were capable of hunting and using basic tools. Then, about 40,000 years ago, modern humans, or Homo sapiens, arrived in the region. They came from Southeast Asia and gradually spread throughout the archipelago. These early inhabitants lived in caves and relied on hunting and gathering for their livelihood. Cave paintings found on Sulawesi and other islands are evidence that these people were also artistically gifted. Then, around 4000 BC, a major change occurred. The Austronesian people, skilled seafarers, began arriving from the direction of Taiwan and the Philippines. They were equipped with modern agricultural knowledge and taught the local people how to farm. They introduced the cultivation of rice, which is still a staple of the Indonesian diet today. These Austronesian people brought not only farming, but also skills in animal husbandry, pottery making, and cloth weaving. Later, around the 1st century AD, merchant ships from India and China began to arrive on the shores of Indonesia. These trade contacts initiated not only economic, but also cultural changes. Hindu and Buddhist religious ideas from India reached here and became deeply rooted in the local culture. The Sanskrit language had a profound influence on the local languages, and many Sanskrit words are still present in Indonesian languages today. The first organized kingdoms began to emerge in the 4th century AD. The Tarumanagara kingdom in West Java was influenced by Hinduism. It was founded by Purnavarman and its inscriptions are found on stone, written in Sanskrit. This kingdom was quite powerful and built large-scale irrigation projects that revolutionized agriculture. In the 7th century AD, the Srivijaya Empire rose to prominence in Sumatra, emerging as a maritime power. It was established with Palembang as its capital and soon gained control of the Strait of Malacca. This strait was the most important route for world trade at the time, as trade between China, India, Arabia, and Europe took place through this route. Srivijaya gained immense wealth by controlling this route. The empire also became a center of Buddhism, and the Chinese Buddhist monk, I Ching, wrote in his travelogue that thousands of Buddhist monks studied here. A period of great architectural development began in central Java in the 8th and 9th centuries AD. The Shailendra dynasty, who were followers of Buddhism, built the magnificent Borobudur temple, which is still considered one of the wonders of the world. The temple has 9 floors and contains more than 2,500 carvings that reflect Buddhist teachings. During the same period, Hindus also built the magnificent Prambanan temple, dedicated to the god Shiva. Both buildings are now UNESCO World Heritage Sites. In the 10th century, a new power emerged in East Java. The Mataram Empire was established, which soon dominated all of Java. Its kings patronized both Hinduism and Buddhism, and built many beautiful temples. In the 11th century, a great king named Erlangga ruled, who brought his empire to the heights of prosperity. In the 13th century, the Singasari Empire was established. This empire was founded by a general named Ken Arok. During this period, Java developed militarily and expanded its influence to Bali and other islands. But the glory of Singasari did not last long, and the last king, Kartanegara, was killed in a bloody rebellion. Soon after, the greatest empire in Indonesian history was established. In 1343, Raden Wijaya founded the Majapahit Empire. The empire reached its peak in the 14th century, when Prime Minister Gajah Mada took power. Gajah Mada swore a famous oath, known as the Palapa Oath, in which he pledged to unite all of Nusantara, or all of the islands, under one flag. He almost achieved this goal, and the borders of Majapahit roughly corresponded to those of present-day Indonesia. The empire was the last great representation of Hindu-Buddhist civilization. A new religious and political era began at the beginning of the 15th century. Islam, which had already reached North Sumatra through Arab traders, now began to spread rapidly. The Islamic Kingdom of Malacca, which was established in Malaysia, played an important role in the propagation of Islam in the region. On the north coast of Sumatra, the Samudra Pasai Empire was established, the first Muslim empire in the region. The famous traveler Marco Polo, when he visited in 1289, mentioned the presence of Islam in the region. Islam was preached in Java by the 9 saints, or holy men, known as Wali Songo. These men spread throughout Java in the 15th and 16th centuries, and invited people to Islam by integrating Islam with local culture. They used music, theater, and other arts to spread the Islamic message. Names such as Sunan Kalijaga, Sunan Ampel, Sunan Giri, Sunan Bonang are still held in high esteem in Indonesia today. In the early 16th century, the Majapahit Empire began to weaken and was eventually replaced by Islamic empires. On the north coast of Java, the Demak Empire was established, the first Islamic empire in Java. Its founder was Raden Patah, the son of one of the Songo governors. This was followed by the Bantam, Cirebon, and other Islamic empires. A major event in the 16th century was the arrival of Europeans. In 1586, Portuguese ships entered Indonesian waters. They were looking for spices, as cloves, nutmeg, and other spices were more valuable than gold in Europe at that time. The Portuguese established trading posts in the Maluku Islands and made treaties with the local sultans. But the influence of the Portuguese was soon challenged by the Dutch. In 1611, the Dutch East India Company was established, the world's first multinational company. The Dutch government gave the company a monopoly on Oriental trade and gave it the power to maintain its own army, build forts, and make treaties. The VOC soon established its influence in Indonesia. In 1613, a Dutch governor-general named Jan Pieterszoon Koen captured Jakarta and renamed it Batavia. The city became the center of Dutch colonial power. The Dutch gradually began to establish control over other parts of Indonesia. They made treaties with local sultans and obtained concessions for the spice trade. In the 17th century, the Islamic Empire of Mataram was the most powerful empire in Central and East Java. Its Sultan Agung fought several wars against the Dutch, but was unable to completely drive them out. The Dutch adopted a policy of divide and rule, pitting local rulers against each other. In the 18th century, the Dutch power grew stronger and stronger. They started cultivating coffee, which proved very profitable. The farmers of Java were forced to work in coffee, sugar, and indigo plantations. This system was very cruel and inflicted immense hardship on the local people. In 1800, the VOC faced financial difficulties and was dissolved. The Dutch government then directly made Indonesia its colony. During the Napoleonic Wars, when France occupied the Netherlands, Britain temporarily occupied Indonesia. From 1811 to 1816, Thomas Stamford Raffles was governor of Java. Raffles introduced some reforms, but 5 years later, Indonesia was returned to the Dutch. In the 19th century, the Dutch tightened their colonial rule. In 1830, the culture system was introduced, under which Javanese farmers were required to set aside 1/5 of their land for export crops. This system proved immensely profitable for the Dutch, but it was extremely painful for the local people, and led to several famines. During this period there were several local uprisings. The most famous was the Java War, which lasted from 1825 to 1830. Prince Diponegoro rebelled against the Dutch and fought a guerrilla war for 5 years. The war proved costly for the Dutch, and thousands of people died. Diponegoro was eventually captured and exiled, but he is considered one of Indonesia's national heroes. The Dutch also faced fierce resistance in Sumatra. The Javanese kingdom fought the Dutch for more than 30 years, from 1870 to 1875. The war was extremely bloody, and the Dutch had to pay a heavy price. The Javanese people resisted bravely and are still famous for their independence today. At the beginning of the 20th century, a national awakening movement began in Indonesia. In 1908, an organization called Bodhio Tomo was established, which emphasized education and cultural awareness. Although this organization was not political, it played an important role in awakening national consciousness. October 20th, 1908, is celebrated today in Indonesia as Youth Pledge Day. In 1920, the Indonesian Communist Party was established, the first communist party in Asia. In 1927, the party revolted against the Dutch but was severely crushed. Thousands of communists were arrested, and many were sentenced to death. During this period, a young engineer, Sukarno, entered the political arena. In 1927, he founded the Partai Nasional Indonesia, or Indonesian Nationalist Party. Sukarno gave new impetus and direction to the independence movement. He presented the Pancasila, or 5 principles, which later became the foundation of Indonesia. These 5 principles were faith in God, fair and civilized humanity, the unity of Indonesia, democracy, and social justice. The Dutch arrested and exiled Sukarno several times, but all these measures backfired and Sukarno's popularity grew. In the 1930s, the independence movement grew stronger and new young leaders emerged, including Muhammad Hatta and Sultan Syahrir. In 1948, World War II began. In 1942, Japan invaded Indonesia and defeated the Dutch army within weeks. The Japanese took the Dutch prisoner and occupied Indonesia for 3 years. The Japanese occupation was also harsh, and millions of Indonesians were forced into forced labor. Many died of hunger and disease. But the Japanese occupation unintentionally strengthened the independence movement. The Japanese trained Indonesian youth in the military and also placed them in administrative positions. They promoted the Indonesian language and banned the Dutch language. All of these things later proved useful in the struggle for independence. On August 15, 1945, Japan surrendered after the United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Just 2 days later, on August 17, 1945, Sukarno and Hatta declared the independence of Indonesia. The declaration was made in front of Sukarno's house at Pegangsaan Timur, number 51. Sukarno read a short statement that said, "We the Indonesian people declare our independence." But declaring independence was one thing, achieving it was quite another. The Dutch wanted to return, and they had the support of Britain. From 1945 to 1949, a bloody 4-year war took place, known as the Indonesian National Revolution. Indonesian soldiers and freedom fighters fought bravely. On November 10, 1945, a great battle took place in Surabaya, which is remembered as Heroes' Day. Young Indonesian fighters fought for the city against the British Army. Although the Indonesians suffered heavy losses, they showed the whole world that they were willing to sacrifice anything for their freedom. The Dutch conducted 2 military operations, called police actions, the first in 1947 and the second in 1948. In these operations, the Dutch retook many territories and arrested the Indonesian leadership. The United Nations began to pressure the Dutch, and the United States threatened to cut off Marshall Plan aid if they did not grant Indonesia independence. Finally, on December 27, 1949, an agreement was reached in the Netherlands in which the Dutch recognized the independence of Indonesia. This was a victory for the sacrifices and struggle of the Indonesian people. Millions of people were martyred. But Indonesia became independent. After independence, Sukarno became president and even vice president. The fledgling country faced many challenges. The economy was in ruins, the infrastructure was destroyed, and there was a severe shortage of educated people. During the Dutch era, very few Indonesians had access to higher education. In the 1950s, Indonesia faced regional insurgencies. The Darul Islam movement attempted to establish an Islamic state. The movement staged insurgencies in West Java, South Sulawesi, and Aceh. Similarly, regional military commanders in Sumatra and Sulawesi also rebelled against the central government. Sukarno founded a unique political system called guided democracy. He argued that Western-style democracy was not suitable for Indonesia, and that a traditional consultative system was better. In this system, the president had broad powers, and the role of parliament was limited. Internationally, Sukarno played a leading role in the non-aligned movement. He organized the Non-Aligned Movement Conference in 1955, which was attended by 9 independent countries from Asia and Africa. This conference was a significant event during the Cold War. In the early 1960s, Sukarno's policies began to shift sharply to the left. He developed close ties with the Communist Party and promoted the concept of Nasim, a union of nationalism, religion, and communism. He adopted a policy of confrontation against Malaysia, and withdrew from the United Nations. But internally, the economy was deteriorating rapidly. Inflation was skyrocketing, and people's lives were becoming increasingly difficult. Tensions were rising between Sukarno and the military. On September 1, 1965, a bloody incident occurred. Some military officers rebelled and killed 6 generals. The coup was allegedly orchestrated by the Communist Party. General Suharto took control of the situation and then began a large-scale massacre against the communists. The massacre, which lasted from 1965 to 1967, killed millions of people. Some estimates put the death toll at between 500,000 and 1 billion. It was one of the bloodiest events of the 20th century. Communist Party members, people of Chinese descent, and other left-wing activists were targeted. Suharto gradually seized power. In March 1966, Sukarno granted him emergency powers. Suharto formally became president in March 1968, and Sukarno was placed under house arrest. Sukarno died in 1970. Suharto called his rule the New Order. He established a military dictatorship but emphasized economic development. Suharto established close ties with the West and promoted capitalism. He invited foreign investment and opened up the economy. Indonesia's economy grew rapidly in the 1970s and 1980s. Rising oil prices benefited Indonesia, as it was a major exporter of oil. Poverty decreased, and education and health sectors improved. Indonesia was considered one of the Asian lions, but this progress came at a high price. Political freedoms were severely restricted. The military was involved in every aspect of life. Corruption was rampant, and Suharto and his family amassed billions of dollars in wealth. Those who opposed the government were imprisoned or disappeared. In 1975, Indonesia invaded and occupied East Timor. East Timor had gained independence from the Portuguese colony and had declared itself an independent country. But Indonesia claimed it as its own and took military control. For the next 24 years, bloody conflict continued in East Timor, killing more than 200,000 people. There were also independence movements in Aceh and Papua that were brutally crushed by the military. Thousands of people disappeared, and there were serious human rights violations. During this period, a new wave of Islamic awakening took place in Indonesia. More and more people were converted to the religion, and Islamic organizations were becoming more powerful. Suharto initially restricted Islamic movements, but later tried to win them over to his side. In the 1990s, Suharto's grip began to weaken. Corruption and malfeasance were rampant. Suharto's children and friends had taken over large parts of the economy. Public unrest began to grow. In 1997, the Asian financial crisis hit Indonesia hard. The currency plummeted, and banks began to fail. Unemployment soared, and millions fell back into poverty. Public anger erupted. In May 1998, there were massive demonstrations in Jakarta and other cities. Led by students, millions took to the streets. On May 13 and 14, terrible riots broke out in which more than 1,000 people died. People of Chinese descent were particularly targeted, and their shops were looted. On May 21, 1998, Suharto resigned. His 32-year rule ended. Vice President Yusuf Habibie was sworn in as interim president. Habibie made some reforms and allowed freedom of the press. Political prisoners were released, and new political parties were allowed to form. A referendum was agreed to in East Timor. In 1999, a referendum was held in East Timor, in which the majority voted in favor of independence. Militias, supported by the Indonesian military, committed widespread violence. But East Timor eventually gained independence and became an independent country in 2002. The first free elections were held in 1999. Megawati Sukarno's party won the most votes, but Abdul Rahman Wahid was elected president. Wahid was an Islamic scholar and liberal figure, but he was in poor health and had little political experience. Wahid's reign was fraught with crises. He was accused of corruption and clashed with Parliament. In 2001, Parliament removed him from office, and Megawati Sukarno Hatta became president. Megawati was the daughter of Sukarno and had high hopes for her. She tried to improve the economy and deal with regional rebellions. An attempt was made to broker a peace agreement in Aceh, but was unsuccessful. On October 12, 2002, a horrific terrorist attack took place in Bali, killing 202 people. The attack was carried out by an extremist organization called Jamaah Islamiyah, which is affiliated with Al-Qaeda. The incident was a major shock for Indonesia. In 2004, the first direct presidential elections were held. Susilo Bambang Yudhoyono, a retired general, was elected president. Yudhoyono was known as SBY and had a calm and moderate personality. Under Yudhoyono, Indonesia made significant progress. The economy stabilized and grew at an annual rate of 5 to 6%. Poverty declined, and the middle class grew rapidly. On December 26, 2004, a devastating tsunami struck Indonesia. An undersea earthquake generated huge waves that devastated the coasts of Aceh and northern Sumatra. More than 170,000 people died. It was one of the worst natural disasters in history. But this tragedy also brought out a positive side. The GAM organization, which was leading the independence movement in Aceh, signed a peace agreement with the government. In August 2005, an agreement was reached in Helsinki, under which Aceh was granted autonomy and GAM laid down its arms. The agreement was successful, and peace was established in Aceh. Yudhoyono also campaigned against corruption and strengthened the Corruption Eradication Commission. The commission arrested many high-ranking politicians and officials. This was a sign of the maturity of democracy in Indonesia. Yudhoyono was re-elected in 2009. The economy did well in his second term, but the pace of reforms slowed. Corruption was still a major problem, and red tape was common in the bureaucracy. In 2014, Joko Widodo was elected president. Known as Jokowi, he was previously the governor of Jakarta, and before that, the mayor of Solo. Jokowi was unique in that he came from a humble background and did not belong to a political or military family. He came from a furniture business. Jokowi has placed great emphasis on infrastructure development. During his tenure, thousands of kilometers of roads were built, new airports were built, and ports were modernized. The first metro train was launched in Jakarta. His goal was to integrate Indonesia and connect remote islands to the center. Jokowi also expanded social welfare programs. He made health insurance universal and provided free medical care to the poor. He increased investment in education and launched scholarship programs. But Jokowi's tenure has also seen some worrying trends. Religious conservatism has grown and violence against minorities has increased. In 2017, Jakarta's Chinese Christian governor, Basuki Tjahadjapurnama, was jailed on blasphemy charges. The case was politically motivated and weakened Jokowi's government. In 2019, Jokowi was elected for a second term, but this time he made his bitter rival, Prabowo Subianto, his vice president. The decision was surprising but brought political stability. The COVID-19 pandemic broke out in late 2019. The pandemic reached Indonesia in March 2020 and spread rapidly. Indonesia became the worst-hit country in Southeast Asia. Millions of people were infected and thousands died. The economy was also severely affected and unemployment rose. The government took various measures to combat the epidemic. Lockdowns were imposed, social distancing rules were enforced, and vaccination campaigns were launched. Indonesia purchased the Sinovac vaccine from China and vaccinated people on a large scale. In 2021, the second and third waves of the epidemic hit Indonesia hard. Hospitals were overwhelmed with patients, and there was a severe shortage of oxygen. In July 2021, more than 50,000 new cases were being reported daily. But by 2022, the effects of vaccination began to show, and the situation improved. In 2022, Indonesia assumed the G20 presidency, and the G20 summit was held in Bali in November. It was a great achievement for Indonesia to host the world's major economies. Jokowi made the historic decision to move the capital from Jakarta in his second term. The new capital, Nusantara, is being built in East Kalimantan. Jakarta had become a very crowded, polluted, and sinking city, so this decision was made. Construction of Nusantara has begun, and it is expected that government offices will begin moving in 2025. In 2024, presidential elections were held. Prabowo Subianto, who had lost twice before, won this time. He included Jokowi's son, Gibran Raka Bambang Raka, as vice president. This decision caused controversy, as many called it family politics. Prabowo became president in October 2024. He is a former general from the Suharto era and has been accused of human rights abuses, but he has softened his image and gained popularity among young people. His government began with promises of stability. In 2025, Prabowo's government announced a focus on economic development and social welfare. He made food self-sufficiency a top priority and promised to increase investment in agriculture. He increased the defense budget and talked about strengthening Indonesia's regional power. As we move into the present day in 2026, Indonesia stands at a pivotal point. It is the world's fourth most populous country, with a population of over 270 million. It is the world's largest Muslim-majority country, yet it has maintained a democratic system. It is a member of the G20 and the world's 16th largest economy. Indonesia's economy is growing steadily and is expected to become one of the world's largest economies in the coming decades. Rich in nickel, coal, palm oil, and other resources, the country can play a major role in the global energy transition. Indonesia is the world's largest producer of nickel, which is essential for electric vehicle batteries. Indonesia's digital landscape is also growing rapidly. Companies like Gojek and Tokopedia have become unicorns, and the country's technology sector is booming. A young population that is equipped with technology is giving the country a new direction. But there are also challenges. Corruption is still a major problem, although it has decreased. Inequality is increasing, and the gap between rich and poor is widening. Environmental problems are also serious, especially deforestation and air pollution. There is also a risk of religious extremism. In recent years, conservatism has grown in Indonesia, and traditional moderate Islam is under pressure. Minorities, particularly Shiites, Ahmadis, and Christians, occasionally face violence. There are also territorial disputes. The independence movement in Papua is still ongoing, and there is occasional violence. The government has divided Papua into two provinces, but the problem has not been resolved. Climate change is a major threat to Indonesia. Coastal cities are at risk from rising sea levels. Jakarta is sinking a few centimeters each year, which is also a reason to move the capital. Extreme weather events such as floods and droughts are increasing. But despite all these challenges, Indonesia's future looks bright. It is a young country, where the majority of its population is under the age of 35. These young people are full of energy and enthusiasm and want to take their country to new heights of development. Indonesia's democratic experiment has also been successful. Since Suharto, the country has held several peaceful elections and transitions of power have been smooth. The media is free and civil society is active. This is no small achievement, especially in the context of Southeast Asia, where many countries are authoritarian or semi-authoritarian. Indonesia also has a very rich cultural heritage. There are many ethnic groups and cultures such as Javanese, Balinese, Minangkabau, Batik, Bugis, and Dayak, each with its own traditions, languages, and arts. Indonesia's national motto, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, meaning unity and diversity, describes this multicultural identity. Indonesia has a unique place in music and the arts. The Gamelan Orchestra, famous in Java and Bali, is recognized worldwide. The Wayang Kulit, or Javanese shadow puppet theater, is on UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage list. Traditional Indonesian dances such as kecak, saman, and pandit are famous for their beauty. Indonesia is a paradise for foodies. Dishes like nasi goreng, satay, rendang, gado-gado are famous all over the world. Each region has its own unique cuisine, and the use of spices is a hallmark of Indonesian cuisine. Tourism is an important part of Indonesia's economy. Bali attracts tourists from all over the world. The ancient temples of Borobudur and Prambanan, Komodo Island, the natural habitat of Komodo dragons, the magnificent underwater life of Raja Ampat, the beauty of Lake Toba, the culture of Yogyakarta, all these make Indonesia an attractive destination for tourists. The education sector is also improving. Institutions like the University of Indonesia, the Bandung Institute of Technology, and Gajah Mada University are establishing themselves at the regional level. The government is increasing investment in education and providing opportunities for higher education to young people through scholarship programs. Health services are also improving. Life expectancy has increased, and infant mortality has decreased. The universal health coverage system, which began under Jokowi, is providing access to health care for millions of people. In sports, Indonesia has made a name for itself in badminton, with Indonesian athletes winning several gold medals at the Olympics and World Championships. Football is also very popular, and the Indonesian national team is improving. Indonesia's foreign policy has been independent and proactive. It is a founding member of ASEAN and plays a leading role in regional cooperation. It is also an active member of the non-aligned movement. Indonesia has always pursued a balanced policy in international affairs and has not been fully aligned with any one power. Indonesia has maintained a balance during the period of increasing tensions between China and the United States. It has strong trade relations with China, but also good relations with the United States and the West. In territorial disputes in the South China Sea, Indonesia has protected its interests and not taken sides. Indonesia also holds an important place in the Islamic world. As the world's largest Muslim country, it represents moderate Islam. Major Islamic organizations such as the Nahdlatul Ulama and Muhammadiyah maintain a balance between traditional Islamic values and modernity. Indonesia has always taken a strong stance on the Palestinian issue. It does not recognize Israel and supports the Palestinian people. This stance is also popular among the public, and the Indonesian people express solidarity with the Palestinians. Indonesia also played an active role in the Rohingya crisis. The Indonesian people helped the Rohingya refugees, and the government put pressure on Myanmar. Thousands of Rohingya refugees found temporary refuge in Indonesia. Indonesia faces major challenges in terms of environmental protection. Large-scale deforestation for palm oil production is threatening biodiversity. Species such as the orangutan and Sumatran tiger are at risk of extinction. The government has taken some steps to protect forests, but much remains to be done. Indonesia faces many opportunities in 2026. The new capital of Nusantara could become a new center of development. Indonesia can play a key role in the electric vehicle industry. The digital economy is growing rapidly, and young entrepreneurs are creating new opportunities. The renewable energy sector also holds great potential. Indonesia has large reserves of geothermal energy and has great potential for generating electricity from solar and wind. The government has set a goal of becoming carbon neutral by 2050. Big changes are also taking place in education. Digital education is being promoted, and there is an emphasis on science and technology education. The government has prioritized STEM education, i.e. science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The story of Indonesia is a story of a long journey, from Javanese people millions of years ago to a modern democratic country in the 21st century. This journey has been filled with countless changes, struggles, and achievements. The glory of Hindu-Buddhist empires, the arrival and spread of Islam, the bitterness of the colonial era, the struggle for independence, the struggle for democracy. All these are part of Indonesia's identity. Today, Indonesia stands at a crossroads where it can either become a global power or be mired in its own internal contradictions and challenges. But its history tells us that the Indonesian people have always overcome adversity and forged ahead. Spread across more than 17,000 islands, this country, home to over 300 ethnic groups and over 700 languages, is a living example of unity and diversity. Its soil holds the power that has given birth to different civilizations over the centuries, nurtured them, and molded them into a new identity. The future of Indonesia lies in the hands of its young people, who want to take their country to new heights by striking a balance between modernity and tradition. These are the same young people who, while embracing technology, remain connected to their cultural identity, who, while becoming global citizens, do not forget their roots. This story, which began millions of years ago, continues today, and future generations will add new chapters to it. This history of Indonesia is not just the story of a country, but a story of human civilization, resilience, diversity, and hope.